You sound like the infomercial type. Not the slap chop kind, but more shake weighty. So, I just got to seeing this movie for the second time today, and I'm sorry I couldn't do it sooner for a full review because of time. But here and now, I finally had the chance to talk about Deadpool in full detail. Now, I like to go back 11 years, back to the time when Ryan Reynolds was in the movie Blade Trinity, and that was the first film I ever saw him in. The first thing that came to mind when I first saw him was that he almost looked like a Jason Lee clone. When Reynolds showed that he had his own style, I actually bought him as an actor. I like his action. Fast forwarding to 2009 is where Reynolds actually had the chance to play the character Deadpool in X-Men Origins Wolverine. But something just didn't feel right about it because his actual dialogue was held back because they were focusing more on Wolverine's story. And then they completely screwed up Deadpool by making the first big mistake, gluing his mouth shut, then giving him arm blades just like Baraka from Mortal Kombat, along with laser eyes just like Cyclops and teleportation powers. It was a complete mess. That is what happens when there's too much interference by the studio. I mean, come on, how else could they have messed that up? Ryan was pretty sure that there was still hope in his future, and that's where the DC movie Green Lantern came along. I wanted to like that movie, but it felt too big for its own good. Copying off Lieutenant Pete Mitchell's backstory from Top Gun in place of Hal Jordan when he was young and growing up, that was just lazy. Even getting one of the lovely stars from the hit TV show Gossip Girls, Blake Lively, for the love interest seemed like a nice idea, but in the end, she was just too bland. And this movie had a $200 million budget, and man oh man, the CGI used in it was just absurd. So obvious. Even Hal Jordan looked too ridiculous with all that CGI slapped on him for his costume. Green Lantern has gone down as one of the biggest disappointments of the decade, and luckily, they actually made fun of it in the opening credits of this film. I even love the idea that they poked fun at the X-Men Origins Wolverine version of Deadpool. It happened while Wade was showing his girlfriend Rebecca his favorite music record of all time. So the story here goes that Ryan Reynolds plays a former Special Forces operative, Wade Wilson. He's a very charming kind of guy, always breaking off jokes and whatnot, always going to the bar and joining his friend, Weasel, played by TJ Miller, every night, until one night he meets the girl of his dreams, Rebecca, and immediately Wade and Rebecca just hit it off. A few years go by, everything is good, but then one day it turns out that Wade discovers that he has cancer. As soon as he finds out about this, he almost gives up hope because he figures there's no cure for his cancer until suddenly one night at the bar, this guy comes around and tells him that he works for this guy named Ajax, who actually can help cure his cancer. Wade decides not to tell Rebecca about it and goes for it. Everything goes to plan, and it turns out that his cancer is cured, but little does Wade realize that Spencer Ajax turns out to be the villain and says that there were some side effects to his cure. And Spencer was planning on doing even more horrific things to Wade since Wade bought into his lies and deceit. Wow, how was he supposed to know that Spencer was going to turn out to be a complete douchebag? Poor Wade is hideous and deformed, and he has to live with it for the rest of his life. And that's where he starts coming up with all different kinds of ideas for a costume. And this is the costume where Reynolds was born to wear comes in. And of course, all you know who else comes in to join the fight. Colossus and Supersonic Teenage Warhead, who I didn't get the name right the first time. And I really like these characters. They actually flesh out the story and flow of the film. Most people say that this is the most accurate version of Colossus that they've ever seen in a movie, and I believe it. And as for Supersonic Teenage Warhead, she was pretty cool too. I just love the part where she uses her supersonic powers to launch Wade Wilson right up to Ajax. Now as for the villain Spencer Ajax, he's just a typical villain that I've seen in almost every other Marvel film so far. The standard, he'll make the hero an offer he can't refuse, the hero suddenly gets wronged and he gets revenge on him, you know the story. And as I said before, the humor was not really laugh out loud for me, but you know what? When they broke the fourth wall, I mean, they really broke the fourth wall. Taking full advantage of this R rating, they included a lot of stuff which you don't see in your typical modern film. I meant Marvel. Perversive language, strong graphic violence, a lot of nudity, the whole shebang. And I have never read any of the comics which were first published back in the early 90s because obviously I was way too young and too innocent to read those around that time. A lot of diehard Deadpool fans out there says that this is close to 100% accurate to what the original comic was, and you know, I believe them. And I especially like the scene with the blind African-American lady who becomes Wade's roommate. That was great. And of course, there has to be a huge Easter egg, which you've seen in the original Avengers film, that makes it into the final battle here. Yeah, maybe it's just me, but I'm sure that was the same gigantic air vehicle that was used in the first Avengers. I love the action. The characters were good for the most part. I'm sorry, now I almost forgot to mention a 5-second Stan Lee cameo. And Deadpool is a lot more fun than it was the first time, so I will give it a 7 out of 10. So what was your favorite moment in this movie? Let me know down below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you all on the flip side.